Alright guys, so we're going to try to implement the stuff that we learned in the last two videos into our actual mustachio rigs. So if you haven't already, go ahead and open up where we left off at the end of the control rigs file. And before we get started, I want to do a few cleanup things to the joint chains that we have here. We probably don't need to do these, but the connections are easy to set back up later. And I just want to make sure that everything is going to run smoothly without errors. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my mustachio left shoulder joint, and I'm actually going to middle mouse drag him to the very top of my, whoops, I actually pulled him out. Make sure I grab the top in this series. I'm going to drag him all the way up here to the top of the outliner. Now this isn't going to change any of the hierarchy or anything like that, but when we start to duplicate, instead of trying to sift through all these different joint chains, I want to have all three right here at top, so that's going to make our lives just a little bit easier. Okay, so second thing that I want to do is we created a point constraint between this clavicle and our shoulder so that it moves along with it. Okay, so I'm actually going to select that shoulder joint. If I open up my hierarchy here, I'm going to look for that point constraint that I created to make this joint drive this joint chain. And for now, I'm actually just going to delete it. Okay, so that clavicle is no longer going to control the arm. Okay, the second thing that I want to do is I'm going to select the IK that we set up, and I'm actually just going to delete that as well, so we no longer have that IK chain. Now after you do that, you're going to want to make sure to go through our joints and look at our rotation values, and right now I have this -0. We ran into issues with that earlier in the tutorial series, so make sure we go through and just replace that with 0. Okay, that one looks fine. And that one looks okay. Okay, and then I'm just going to hide a couple of things. I'm just going to grab my clavicle and hit Control H. And for now, let's just hide our main joint chain running up the spine as well. Okay, so this is just visually clearing out the space a little bit so that we don't have anything getting in our way. Okay. Okay, so we should have our mustachio left shoulder joint. Okay, if we want to, while we're at it, I'm going to grab that wrist, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that point constraint as well for now. Okay, and if we wanted to, we could grab that wrist and we could hide that as well. So all we have is our shoulder, elbow, and our wrist. Okay, so let's get started. So again, we're going to work with our base, which is we're going to use our current joint chain as our base. We're going to duplicate and create an FK driver, and we're going to duplicate again, and we're going to have an IK. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab our shoulder joint and hit Control D. Okay, I'm going to grab that chain, and I'm also going to move it up here. Okay, let's go ahead and rename now. So I'll name this FK, JNT. We can go ahead and change these as well. Elbow, FK, JNT, and wrist, FK, JNT. Okay, so I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to hit Control D one more time. And we'll go ahead and bring him up. Okay, so we have all three of our chains at the very top of our outliner. And let's go ahead and rename these. IK. Drop this down. Make sure we do IK. And change his last FK to IK. Okay, so again, we're going to start working on our FK setup first. So I'm going to grab my base shoulder, my IK. I'm going to hit Control H. So the only thing that we have in our scene is our FK. Okay, now I'm going to go through and I'm going to create our controls for the shoulder and for the elbow. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit trickier because our geometry that we're using is I don't want to say odd shaped, but if we go ahead and let me go show the polygons, he's got very thick arms, and those controls are going to have to be a little more customized to be able to fit around this space without being hidden inside of the geometry. and we can adjust those after we start to build them. Okay, so I'm going to grab my shoulder with my TD tools open. I'm going to go ahead and create, I'm going to use a cube. Okay, so create a cube. I'm going to take that cube and scale him in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my polygons so I can see how big this guy is. Okay. So it's pretty okay for now. Again, we can come back and adjust these control vertices if we find later on that they're a little too hard to grab. But for right now, he looks okay. Okay, I'm going to go to the elbow. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a cube. Alright, and this one you're going to find is a little bit harder. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. Let's scale them in this direction. Let's grab the center and scale out. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn off my handle selection and my joint selection, so that as I grab CVs on this curve, it's not going to grab joints instead. Then I'm going to right click, go to Control Vertex. I'm going to grab, and I'm just going to pull these forward a little bit. Okay, maybe scale it in a little more. Okay, so that should be okay. Now, excuse me, we want to make sure that we take these and we group them like we did before. Okay, so I'm going to grab my mustachio left shoulder, FK, instead of JNT, it's going to be CNTRL. Same with our elbow, instead of JNT, CNTRL. Okay, I'm going to grab my shoulder control, and I'm going to make sure I hit Group Me. Grab my elbow control. Again, we're doing this to get rid of all these values on our actual controls, or we're going to nest them in the group. Okay, so I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to hit Group Me. Okay, so once we have those controls created, I'm going to grab my elbow control group, and I'm going to parent that underneath of my shoulder control. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn my geometry off for now. Okay, now let's set up our constraint connections to the joints. Okay, so I'm going to grab my shoulder control. I'm going to grab my shoulder joint. Oh, make sure we turn joint selection back on. And I'm going to go to Constrain, Orient. Grab the elbow control, grab the elbow joint, and hit Constrain, Orient. Okay, as always, before we move on, we want to make sure that these connections are actually working. Okay, so I rotate my control, that's great. I rotate the elbow, and that moves as well. So that is good. Those seem to be working fine. Okay, and if you want to, we can grab these controls, and we can also bring them up to the top, again, just to keep this whole system together visually in our outliner. Okay, now let's move on to the IK. So I'm going to grab my FK chain, and I'm going to hit Control H. And I'm going to grab my IK chain, and I'm going to hit Shift H. Okay, so that's going to bring that back visible. Okay, so let's set up our IK. So go to Skeleton. Let's go to Create IK Handle. Let's go ahead and click on our shoulder. Click on our wrist. Okay, I'm going to grab him and move him up as well. Okay, let's grab our IK, make sure that that is working, and it is. So that's good. And now we want to create a control that's going to drive our IK setup. Okay, so I'm going to grab my wrist. I'm going to go to CMD, my tools, CGMTD tools, and let's create a circle. Okay, I'm going to rotate this circle into place here. Line him up a little more according to our bone structure, and let's go ahead and turn on our polygons again. Okay, so you can see that he's far too small, so I'm going to scale him up. Okay, something like that should be good. And then again, our last step with that group is first name. So we're going to have our IKCNTRL. And then I'm going to hit group me. Okay, let's go ahead and turn off our polygons again. Minimize this menu here. And let's grab our control, our IK control. Let's shift select our IK handle, and let's do a constrain point constraint. Okay, so let's make sure that this is working. We're going to grab the control, move him around, make sure that it is driving the chain. And it is. Okay, I'm going to grab this control group. I'm going to move him up also. Okay, so I'm actually going to stop the video here. Make sure that you guys got those things situated. In the next video, we're going to pick up and we're going to start tying all these chains together.